Let's build on our previous video on advanced color development, and this time explore how to use a variety of color development tools to enhance an image. We're once again working with that incomplete image of NGC 7000 that so far has only 7 hours and 45 minutes of integration. This is an image that I won't consider complete until it has at least 12 hours of integration and possibly 16. So this is an image that, in terms of information collection, is presently between 1/2 and 2/3 complete. And as odd as this next statement might sound, that makes it ideal for us to work with. Because if we can pull good color out of such an information-poor image, we can pull good color out of anything. So, on the screen before you is the RGB component and the luminance component. The subs for both components were previously stacked in PixInsight's weighted batch preprocessor. Then, in PixInsight, the Blur Exterminator tool was run on them. They were then histogram balanced using my perfect histograms in 60 seconds evolve technique. Linear fit was run on the RGB components to color balance them, then they were combined using the channel combination tool. Finally, the stars were removed and they were exported. To see this process in more detail, please see the previous video, part 1 of advanced color development. In part 1, I showed how to use the levels tool and then the channel mixer tool to manipulate color. This was to illustrate these two tools, which are both exceedingly powerful, yet counterintuitive and complex. In this video, we'll use a logical series of color development tools to lay a color foundation, modify it, enhance it, and then edit it. Now, if you followed my previous videos, you know that I do not do any developing in PixInsight. It's a capable developer, but in my opinion, not a good developer. Its methodologies are old, its layout, it resembles applications from the 90s. It can develop, but it's old and awkward and inefficient to work with, and it's imprecise because it's not a layer-based developer. So I do the lion's share of my developing in a layer-based photo editor, in my case that's Affinity Photo 2, and then I do final touch-ups in an application that is a color and light specialist, Photolab 8. So let's begin by working in Affinity Photo 2. The first thing I need to do is composite the luminance layer to the color layer. This will merge the complete information from both layers together, and typically the best way to composite a luminance layer to an RGB layer is to use the luminosity composite mode. So I'll just do that now. A luminance channel shot on a monochrome camera captures light, shadow, and detail information 300% more efficiently than such information can be captured using RGB or one-shot color, and vastly more efficiently than narrowband. But LRGB is quite vulnerable to light pollution, so you need to be in an area of dark skies to really take advantage of it. But I do live in an area of dark skies, so I shoot almost exclusively in LRGB, and by compositing the luminance channel to the RGB, I'm able to add all the color, light, shadow, and detail information captured in the RGB to the tremendous amount of light and shadow and detail information captured on the luminance channel. All that required was clicking on the luminance layer and then selecting the luminosity composite mode. Then I'll right-click on one of the layers to open a menu and go to the Merge Visible option. I'll select that, and a new single pixel layer will be created with the total combined information from both layers. The original RGB and luminance layers are no longer needed. I'm going to make them invisible and group them, dub the group Originals, just to remind me what that group contains, and then make the group itself invisible too, just to make sure I don't accidentally make these images visible again later on in editing. Now this new pixel layer contains all the information from the luminosity and RGB channels, but it's together. And if I were to develop that information, because it's all blended together right now, developing would be more likely to create artifacts. Plus, I could not push the developing as far due to that increased risk of creating artifacts. So I'm going to separate the high from the low frequency components. High frequency information contains detail, and low frequency information contains color and light. This is very easy in Affinity Photo. All I have to do is select the pixel layer, then go to the Filters drop-down menu and select the Frequency Separation tool. I'll move the pixel slider bar all the way to 100, all the way to the right, and activate the tool. In a moment, the pixel layer will be divided into its high and low frequency components. Now we'll begin by operating on the low frequency components where light, shadow, and color are contained. I'm going to begin by laying a foundation of color, or put another way, increasing the color intensity of this image to something more pleasing to the eye. This will also help me to perceive what colors are actually present in this image. This is probably the easiest part of the whole process. I'll just open a vibrance tool, and in this case, I'm going to increase the saturation to 59%. This will intensify all the color evenly throughout the image, allowing us to see the true color that was captured by the RGB filters and making it intense enough that it appeals to human perception. As I go about color editing, I'll frequently go up to the upper right tabs and click on the histogram tab. This reveals the RGB histogram for the entire image. And in particular, I'm going to watch here for color clipping. It looks like the G&B channels are good. There's a bit of black space and a lot of white space between the left and the right side of their light curves. I can select the discrete blue channel here and double check that, and I'll select the discrete green channel and double check that. It looks good here too, but the red might be an area of concern. Let's take a look. The red light curve goes all the way to the left side of the histogram, meaning that there is plenty of red in the darkest regions of the image. And if we imagine the histogram in quarters, in the second quarter, just left of an imaginary center line, we see a lot more of the red information, indicating that there is plenty of red on the low side of the mid-range tones. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the use of histograms, let's take a moment to quickly review. The histogram goes from left to right. The further to the left you are, the darker the tones. And the further to the right you go, the brighter the tones. All the way at the left edge is your black point, where pure black begins, and all the way at the right side is your white point, where pure white begins. Any information that may have been beyond the black points is lost in pure black, or you might say the information was not captured, and anything beyond the white points has been lost in pure whites. There's so much light that no detail can show. This information is blown out. The vertical of a histogram represents how many pixels have captured light at a specific tone. For example, if we look again at the upper right, at the histogram depicting the red light curve, we can see that roughly a quarter of the pixels are depicting lower mid-tone reds. In a future video, we'll take a much more thorough look at the histogram, how to apply it to astrophotography, and why often you should break so many of the histogram rules, such as expose to the right, create a mountain, and spread your light curve across the entire histogram. These are truisms that frequently don't work in astrophotography, and in fact, often enough don't even work in standard photography. Overall, this histogram looks good. Now, for those of you classically trained in photography, you might be thinking this histogram doesn't look good, I need to do something to pull the histogram to the right, but that's not always the best way to manage a histogram. NGC 7000 has a lot of shadow contrasted against areas of brightness and that beautiful blue chasm running diagonally down the middle of it. A subject like this creates drama by contrasting dark midtones against deep shadow with only highlights of bright here and there. This high contrast is portrayed within the histogram by the upside down horseshoe shape of the light curve. There's a fair bit of information on the low side in the very dark tones, and a lot of information in the lower midtones, but a significant gap between the dark tones and the lower midtones. That indicates contrast. That's what's naturally there in the image. It's what gives this image its drama. And it's what we'll aim to bring out as we continue to develop the color within this image. Next, we're going to both enhance and somewhat transform the color using the Levels tool that was discussed in the previous video on this topic. I'll open the Levels tool above the Vibrance tool so that the effect builds on what the Vibrance tool has already accomplished, and in the drop-down menu switch to the green channel. Here, we get a histogram that reveals that the light curve's black points on the left and white points on the right are a long way from where the light curve actually rises and reveals the nebula. This means there is a lot of room for color enhancement and transformation. I'll begin by moving the white points up to 72%. This will brighten the green within the image. And it will have for the moment an undesired transformative effect on the blue, making it very pale and the green within the blue predominant. And I'm going to move the gamma up to 1.148, which will pull the green out of both the brightest and the darkest areas of the image, and steepen the light curve of the green channel so that its effects appear more brilliant, and any detail best revealed by green are presented better. Let's take a moment and discuss how this works according to color theory. We are presently editing in RGB, an additive color space. Think of red as the left side of the spectrum, and blue as the right side of the spectrum, and green as the color range of everything in between. If we intensify green, it makes reds and blues paler. This often has a desired effect on blues, giving them an electric cyan or azure color, like the sky on a clear summer day. It looks quite beautiful in nebulae. And if we reduce the green, it darkens our reds, giving them a pure, more ruby-like color. Many persons find this preferable for the presentation of red within an astrophoto, especially if nebulae with red in them, though it's not really the natural red present in those images, and I think the preference for that deep red comes from people getting used to the effects of false color in narrowband images. Now in astrophotos, those deep ruby-like reds and cerulean blues are often considered highly desirable, perhaps because we see so much false color due to the prevalence of narrowband these days. Or maybe we humans just have a natural instinct to draw to those colors. Cerulean reminds us of clear skies, and deep reds perhaps remind us of brilliant sunsets. In any event, you might see a problem with the adjustment of the green. Lifting it gives us the cerulean blues we want, and lowering it gives us the deep reds that we want. In other words, to get the blues we want, we have to sacrifice on the reds, or vice versa. To get both colors we want, we'll have to be more sophisticated than just adjusting the greens, but we'll get to that. Let's continue our exploration of what green channel adjustment does to red. If we intensify the green on those reds, we get yellows and oranges, which can be lovely and useful if a region of a nebula has a flame-like appearance. The Flame Nebula is a great example. When developing the Flame Nebula here, I lifted the green in the red spaces to enhance its flame-like appearance. But in the case of NGC 7000, the Chasm, I'm using the green to establish a foundation to apply more blue to. Because green plays such a powerful influence in the image's color, I've left the Levels tool where I adjusted the green alone, with no further adjustments, and I've dubbed it LVLG for level green. But I still need to adjust the red and the blue, so I'll open another Levels tool and use it for both of them. I'll place that tool above the previous Levels tool, so it'll just add its effect to the Levels tool below. And I'll start by working on the blue channel. You can see that, as with green, the white point of the blue channel light curve is far off from the actual lifting of the curve itself, and there's even a bit of space between the black point over on the left and the left side of the blue light curve. This gives us lots of latitude to make adjustments. I'm going to lower the white point to 54%, not quite all the way to the light curve, but it's going to strongly emphasize the appearance of blue within the image. And then I'm going to increase the gamma to 1.326, which is going to steepen the light curve, emphasizing any detail that is revealed in blue, and pulling the blue out of both the darker and brighter areas. Also note that this has intensified the appearance of both red and blue within the image. People tend to find green an undesirable color within nebulae, though it does occur naturally sometimes, usually as something like a dirty trace color. And this technique, well, I was about to say it pulls the green out of the nebula, but it doesn't exactly do that. It uses green to lift the red and the blue, and then it enhances that lifting by intensifying the blue within the image, which builds upon what the green has done to intensify the appearance of red and blue within the image, while all the while minimizing that residual green in the background. Let's go back to our discussion of color theory here. We're working in the red, green, blue color space. The color space is a wheel. Red occupies a third, green a third, blue a third. Shift any color on that wheel, and the transformation also affects the other colors on the wheel. So, I mentioned earlier that lowering greens darken blues, and darken and intensified reds, while lifting greens brighten blues to something like the clear cerulean of a summer sky, and lifted reds to flame-like yellows and oranges. Well, lifting blues has a way of deepening and purifying the intensity of a red, making it, I guess you might say, somewhat ruby-like. And lifting blues can easily overwhelm greens, making the green more intense, like a clear summer sky seen straight overhead but approaching sundown. Let me digress and show you what happens when we lift the red channel. All the red becomes more intense, which is to be expected, but red also begins to spread everywhere and into everything. And that's because, in space, red is very often a predominant color. So, in this image, whether weak or intense, it is spread out everywhere, and enhancing it by lowering the white level allows red to overwhelm the other colors. We can pull back on some of that effect by increasing the gamma, which restricts red to darker and lighter areas and pulling it somewhat from areas where it's weaker. To speed up your own color editing workflow, it helps to try to memorize how these color channel transformations will affect most deep sky objects. Let's review them. Enhancing the blue channel deepens and darkens blues, and deepens and intensifies reds, and when used judiciously, can help a red look very deeply red, kind of like a ruby. Enhancing the green channel lifts blues, giving them a clear cerulean sky kind of look, and it lifts reds into yellows and oranges. Very useful for those nebulae that have regions that look somewhat like fire. and enhancing reds intensifies reds, which then have a tendency to spread into and wash out both blues and greens within an image. Let's get back to where we left off in editing our image. The color in the chasm is not yet what we want. I'm pretty happy with the now cerulean color, but I want to brighten and intensify it. And in particular, I want to darken and intensify the red around the south rim of the chasm, which will help the detail there to stand out and make this image very visually appealing. I'm going to accomplish this by building on the changes that have already been done by enhancing them with the channel mixer tool. I'll begin by operating on the red channel, where I'll increase the red to 139, then decrease the green to -22 and decrease the blue to -8. This will intensify all red within the image and pull much of the influence of the red out of the blue and green majority areas. Then I'll switch to the blue channel and further enhance the blues. On the blue channel, I'll reduce the influence of red to -14, which will mainly serve to pull the red from the primarily blue areas within the image. And the increase on the green channel will help to transform that dark blue color into an even brighter cerulean. Now, while this image has a natural dark and somber brooding quality, it does need to be a bit brighter, I think. So, I'm going to open the brightness tool over the previous tools and pull the brightness up to 29%. If you're wondering why I'm not using the exposure tool for such an adjustment, it's because you can make finer adjustments with brightness. Now we're getting into the endgame of color adjustment. I like a lot what I have here so far, but this is a dark and broody subject, and I want to emphasize that even more. To do that, I want to put a bit more contrast within the image by drawing down the darks and enhancing the brighter areas even more. That's a straightforward job. I'll accomplish it by opening a curves tool, and remembering our discussion on color theory, how we can use green to transform blues and reds, I'm going to draw down slightly on the lower quarter of the green channel, and then increase the upper quarter slightly, creating a classic S-curve on the green channel. Watch the effect. We're getting closer to those deeper reds and bright greens that we're looking for. We're not quite perfectly there yet, but we're much closer. Now let's do the same thing on the blue channel. I'm going to exactly mimic the curve that I made on the green channel, further deepening the reds toward that ruby-like red that is so desirable, and giving us a bit purer blue. This is about as far as we can push the color in Affinity Photo. After all, it's not a primary light and color editor like Photolab 8. However, now it's time to remove some artifacting. The main downside I find with Affinity Photo 2, as much as I love it, is that its tools often create artifacts around the edges of images where information is often weak, especially with astrophotos. That weakness happens because through the night as one is imaging, slight movements in the mount, perhaps through dithering, mean that the very edges of an image don't quite get as much information as other parts of an image. To deal with this, I'm going to make all the tools invisible, then turn them on one by one till I find the culprits, the tools that are mainly responsible for the artifacting, which is mostly over on the left. So you could probably see that most of the problem went away when I turned off the Levels tool. The Levels tool and the Channel Mixer tool are the two most powerfully transformative tools for color that I used, so that makes sense to me. Power equals sensitivity, and sensitivity leads to artifacts. But the Vibrance tool at the very bottom of the list contributed a little. In fact, you could accurately say that it laid the foundation for the color artifacting. And that's because most of the image is information-rich compared to that very left edge. Anyway, I'll remove the effect of the Vibrance tool just in that corner. I'll open a paintbrush, select the color black, set it for a flow of 100% so that it has a full effect but a hardness of 0 to create a soft brush that blends naturally and easily into the rest of the image, and set an opacity of 33% to make the effects of the paintbrush 2/3 translucent. And with the color black, it'll work to paint a mask over the left edge of the Vibrance tool. With the opacity at 1/3, it means every time I run the paintbrush over the image, only 1/3 of its effect is applied to the image, allowing me to make very subtle, fine changes. And then I'll gently paint out the effects of the Vibrance tool from the corner of the image. The goal is to leave in enough color transformation that it matches the rest of the image without going so far as to create artifacts. I click and hold down the mouse button to have it paint the black mask. Since I have the opacity turned down, each mask is only 1/3 the strength that it could be. If I find that I need to paint over another layer of mask, I have to lift the mouse button and hold it down again. Alright, with the Vibrance tool's foundational color artifacting removed, let's see how much of the two Levels tools we still need to mask out. I'll just select them and make them visible and invisible back and forth to compare and contrast. With the foundational vibrance tools effects corrected, the artifacting created by the levels tools is reduced. However, it's still there, so I'll select both tools to mask them both at the same time and use the exact same technique to partially remove their effects on the image. And over the next few minutes, I'll apply the exact same, very gentle masking to the brightness and the curves tools, applying just enough specifically placed masks to remove the artifacting and balance the presentation of color with the rest of the image. The next thing for me to do is sharpen up the high frequency information to improve the detail and help it show up better within this now color adjusted image. But I've covered how to improve detail in several previous videos on my synergistic sharpening technique, and it's beyond the scope of this video. The final step in this color editing process is to prepare the image for export to Photolab 8, which is an application that specializes in the development of color and light, and it can push the development of color within this image even further, as you'll see in the next video in this series. But if there is any residual noise still remaining in the image, advanced developing techniques like this absolutely will bring it out. And in the course of final touch-ups in Photolab 8, it'll present in the image as something like glitter scattered over the image. To mitigate that, it's important to denoise the image before exporting to Photolab 8. To do this, I'll right-click on the topmost layer and select Merge Visible. All the information, along with all the edits, will be merged into a single new layer. On this layer, I'll just run RC Astro's Noise Exterminator. Yep, the Noise Exterminator runs in Affinity Photo 2. It also runs in Photoshop. Perhaps in GIMP, I'm just not sure, though I haven't used GIMP in a long time. Once denoising is completed, I'll export to Photolab 8, and that's where we'll pick up the series again in the final part on advanced color development. As always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate what was to me really quite surprising interest that persons had in my layer-based astrophotography editing. I genuinely believe that this is a superior method to go about developing your images, because editing in layers allows you to make very specific adjustments without affecting other kinds of information, which mitigates the presentation of artifacts, avoids changes to parts of an image you had not intended to change, and therefore allows your editing to be very precise, as well as allowing you to push the data much further in terms of development, to derive much more color and detail from it than you thought you could, yet remaining true to the image. If you have any thoughts, observations, or questions, please let me know in the comments section below. Now, get out there and shoot that marvelous sky.